Lisa is absent as she is attending a police conference as we speak. John Bruno's here, Rick Webb is here, Ian McKenzie is here, Matt Shoemaker is here, our chief is here, deputies here, Sarah, Lincoln, and Lisa. And we have some special guests that we will introduce later. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Any conflicts of interest by anyone? Questions and information arising out of the minutes and not otherwise on the agenda? Seeing none. Adoption of minutes moved by Rick, seconded by Ian. Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting as presented are hereby approved. All in favor? Approved. Motion to accept the agenda on May 26, 2022. Rick and Matt. Resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting as presented be hereby approved. All in favor? Approved. We have a presentation from an old student of mine, presented by Sergeant David Sweeney. Who
was my grade 6.
Grade 6. I was only 19 at that time. I was only 19, David.
Is that a conflict?
He has a presentation, No Colors Initiative. So welcome.
Thank you.
And let's get right at it.
Yeah, so we put together a small PowerPoint presentation, and it's only a few slides long. The purpose of the presentation is to give you a background and an idea of what the No Gangs, No Colors Initiative, or No Clothing, No Colors Initiative is, and what we're doing about it. It's in regards to outlaw motorcycle gang, otherwise known as biker gangs. We established the initiative back in 2017. We attended to a number of local establishments in the city. Most of them are bars or entertainment venues, restaurants. Asked them to display the sign that you see on the right-hand side there. And again, the goal was to discourage outlaw motorcycle members from wearing their colors, and that's a verbiage that's used in the gang world. Their colors are the items on their clothing that identify them as members of a outlaw motorcycle gang, such as, and I'm sure most of us have seen them. They're usually a leather vest, and we'll show you some pictures here with identifying markers. The posting of the sign also empowers the police service and its members to enforce trespass to property acts on their behalf. So ultimately, what we envisioned was the signs clearly posted. They're welcome to attend the establishment without wearing their identifiable clothing or colors. And if they fail to follow those rules, the Trespass to Property Act gives us authority to remove them on the request of the owner. So it allows us to be able to act if need be. Ultimately, that's, we don't want to have to remove anybody, where we're going to simply ask them to remove their clothing, and you're welcome to stay. That's the first step always, right? Try to get a conversation and establish some rapport with them and have them move along or take the clothing off. So that's what they look like on the right-hand side. They're called cuts, if you hear that term. Most of them are leather vests. You'll see a top, they call them rockers, that identify the club they belong to. On the left there is the Outlaws, on the right is the Black Pistons. The bottom rocker identifies where their club is located. Some of them are specific to provinces, some of them are specific to Canada, some of them are specific, there's people here from the United States or parts of Europe that'll say that as well. And then the emblems in the middle, and the MC stands for the motorcycle club. So currently in Sault Ste. Marie, essentially it's one club, but it's two identifiable clubs. It's the Outlaws you see on the left, that have an established club here in the Sioux with a clubhouse. And we also have the Black Pistons, and the Black Pistons are in league with the Outlaws. They work together, they're friends, they go to all the same parties, they do all the same stuff. So there's no real rivalry in the city between the two of them. And that's what we normally see in town. We have good rapport with the leaders of both those groups. We talk to them often. We go visit them unexpectedly and surprisingly, and we make sure that they know that we're around, and they're well aware of this initiative as well. So generally speaking, you wear those vests and those cuts to intimidate other rival motorcycle groups or other people in the community that they don't see eye to eye with, and we want to avoid that in public settings. You'll also see probationary members. So usually it consists of you're part of the club for a year. On the left there, you'll see a local member who's, anyway, he has a clearly identifiable probationary. That would include in the same rules for the sign you're not supposed to wear. And at the end of the day, so in Canada, there's so many different people that ride motorcycles and belong to different clubs. The purpose of this initiative is to identify the 1% motorcycle clubs, and the 1% motorcycle clubs are those that have been clearly defined as criminal organizations that are involved in a criminal element, whether it's, you know, prostitution, drugs, whatever it is. There's all kinds of other clubs in the city and around Canada, including, you know, veteran riders and all kinds of other people that ride. That's not the intention. It's the sole intention is for the 1% clubs, Hells Angels, Outlaws, Black Pistons, Banditos, and such. So if we tell the owners of the establishments, if you have somebody attending into your establishment and they're clearly wearing their colors, we don't want them to approach. It's not on them. We simply ask them to call the police. We have records here at this police service that indicates every establishment that has the signs. So we simply ask them to call and say, we have these people in, they're wearing their identifiable colors in the facility. We're not comfortable with them here. We'd like you to come and speak with them and see if we can't get that changed. We'll dispatch patrol officers initially to help and assist. And most of our patrol officers have received organized motorcycle gang training in order how to deal with them and speak with them. And again, we tell the establishment owners, if you're not really sure, because sometimes lots of people wear t-shirts and hats that say support Hells Angels, support Outlaws. If they're not sure and they want to ask the question, we're happy to attend and make that decision at that time. It essentially takes the onus off the establishment owner and puts the onus on the police officers and all that negative attention to the police officers. This is our initiative. This is what we're doing. If you have an issue with it, it belongs to us, not to the owner of the establishment. And I mean, that sums it up relatively quickly. I brought an example of the sign just so you guys can see the size of it. It's not exactly a huge billboard with blinking lights saying, you know, get out. It's
Right away.
Yeah. So that's the size of it. It has to be clearly identifiable in the establishment, which it would be if you walked in and you saw it, or to the point where if we're responding to something, we can simply say, look at, sir or ma'am, here's the sign right here. It clearly identifies the rules that you have to follow. Please take off your clothing. They don't want you in here with the clothing. And if you're not agreeable to that, I'm going to have to ask you. And hopefully it avoids any other escalation of thing. And then if they're not happy with it, they can take it up with us, not the establishment. The idea is to avoid any future criminal enterprises or criminal activity within the establishments, or fights or intimidation of that sort of thing.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments from?
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great initiative from the police department. And although it's not big flashing lights, it clearly tells them it's located at the window or the entrance to the premises. Hey, we got to take our colors off. Cool.
And I like the fact that you've made approach to them in advance of putting up the sign.
Yes.
So the relationship building is there so that there isn't any confrontational situation right off the bat.
Yes.
So all of that's been done. Good, thank you. Rick, Matt, anything? Good. So we thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And,
Thank you.
And
I'd like to stay longer, but Three calls.
No, son, you don't have to be
That'll be up to the
dishonest
board
about
chair.
it.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
Okay.
Good job.
Take care.
Thanks, Jody. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Good job.
Good
Well
job.
done.
Clearly had good teachers, right?
What?
I said he clearly had good teachers.
Of course. I was at my best. I was 19. The reports, communication and reports information only. Chief, I'll give it to you.
Okay,
Any special accounts ledger?
We'll start off with your board account ledger. The only addition there on the 29th of April and the 13th of May was the auction funds that were added to your account. And proceeds of crime on the 8th. So 81, 75, and 79 were added to your board account ledger. And nothing came out. If that's all good, we'll move on to our overtime costs. So when we look at our overtime, we see in 2022, we went from 91 in March, 92 to 96 between the 2 months. There was a 4,000 increase. If we look at the differential between 2021 in April and our current, between 79 and 96, we went up 16,000 in 1 month. And my staff have been good enough to show me the reasons for that. We had scene security on an arson. We had a home invasion that resulted in 2 crime scenes where the suspect left and then, if you recall, drove into the side of a building. All of those are heavy overtime issues and account for most of that money. The remaining overtime will be simply due to staff shortages. We go to the next slide. We'll see 3-year monthly staff shortage overtime costs. We see that between March and April, we went from 15,000 a month of overtime and staff shortages to 26,000, almost an 11,000 increase. If we look at what we were in 2021, the same time at 15, we're now 25, which is another 10,000 increase. Next slide, more of the same. You can see staff shortage overtime costs, specifically in the civilian world, was very significant, where you had 1530 in overtime in March and you went to 57 in April. That's a 4,000 increase. And more or less, a lot of that had to do with the COVID. People were off with COVID. We had to backfill. We had shortage costs on civilians already. And that accounts for that part as well. When we have these serious occurrences, obviously, it's not just the police costs go up, but also the civilian administrative experts that have to work on crime scenes also goes through the roof. So anytime I show you a serious incidents that occur, whether it's a homicide or an arson or multiple crime scene holds for 3 or 4 days, that also impacts on the civilian costs as well. Any questions? Okay, if we go to our stats crime, we have a lot of stuff here, and instead of doing month of January, February, March, we're going to just simply do the March to March stats and March year-to-date stats from the previous year. Otherwise, we'll have to order dinner. So the first document you have up in front of you there is your 21 Stats Crime Index year-to-date annual. So if we look at crimes of violence, we see total crimes of violence between March and this year and March of last year was up 3.6%. Our crimes of property, however, have went down. B&Es went well, down 1%, which is more or less staying stable. The big news item there is that businesses break and enters went down 42%. Others, which includes sheds and whatnot, went up 48, so it sort of offset it to give us a -1. If we look at our theft occurrences, they did go up from 1843 to 2540, or a 38% increase. If we look at the frauds, actually went down 15%. Possession of stolen properties went down 25. The total crimes of property were up 12.3% between the 2 months, year to date. Drugs were down 32%. Total crimes overall were up 10%. We'll take you now to let's see, the month of March. So when we do the monthly statistical report, Lincoln, that's that one right there, Brian? Yeah, you have to spin through a couple there because there's 3 months worth. I'll let you pull the slide up there. Okay. So this is month to month, and we see that when we look at comparison of March this year to month last year, our total calls for service were down 13%. Our crimes of violence were, in terms of robberies, went from 7 to 9, or 28%. Assaults went down 25%. Sex assaults were down 23%. Crimes of property is a good story. When we look at month to month between the 2 years, we're down 54% in total break and enters. 72% of that was businesses, 51% was residences. So all those crimes of property in terms of protecting your home were down significantly in the 50% market when we compare month to month. When we look at theft of motor vehicles, went down from 9 to 2. Mischiefs were down 45 to 36, or 20%. Motor vehicle collisions were up slightly, 18%, from 131 to 155. I think part of that might be the fact that we're more mobile when we don't have lockdowns and whatnot related to COVID, which was last year. Impaired drivings are down from 6 to 2. Bail violations are down 34%. So that's sort of a high overview. You can all go through each one of those months on your own. If you have any further questions, I'm more than happy to be open to them. We'll go on to public complaints. Of the 5 new complaints we received in the month of April, only one of them is going to investigation. The other 4, being 1, 2, 3, and 5, were found not to be taken on by OIRPD. When we look at our year-to-date numbers, we're at 15. This time last year, we were 16. Use of force stats. We see the incidence of use of force. Unfortunately, we're moving higher from 5 in March to 10 total incidents in April. We went from 8 reports to 16. Pointed firearms stayed relatively constant between 8 and 7 of the 2 months. Firearms drawn was 6. And if we look at conducted energy weapons, we went from 3 to 6. And the examples of where they were used are itemized in your report for you. In terms of travel log, obviously these days, the fact that the world has opened up, we have a little bit of a backlog in terms of getting our people out and trained. So you can see Inspector Duguay was sent to a Canadian Association Chiefs of Police Leadership Conference and represented the service, brought back some great information. Myself on the OACP Board of Directors meeting in Richmond Hill and Vaughan, and the CEO day. The other below in officers and civilians were all primarily adequacy requirements in terms of intoxilizers, search warrant courses, master instructor research for use of firearms, K9 training, and CISO meetings. Next is notes of appreciation. This is probably the most fun in this whole discussion. In March, I received an email from an individual that wished to thank Constable Sherry McGuire for her kindness and her empathy during the tragic and sudden death of a loved one. She waited for them for 3 hours until the coroner arrived, and this person wanted us to know they're proud of their police service, which is incredibly nice to hear. Second one comes from Archbishop Anne of the Diocese of Algoma, thanking us for the Walk for Peace. The officers provided escort for those walking and an added level of security and protection that day. You can see the comments. And Last but not least, someone thanked me for my comments at the Festival of Indian Night, which was an absolute privilege to go to and speak at, and actually sat next to my first monk that I've ever sat next to, and I had a wonderful evening. So they were a wonderful group of people. It was a great celebration of culture and food and dance, and I look forward to the next one. That's it, Mr. Vice Chair.
Any questions or comments?
No, it's nice to see the compliments coming in from citizens that appreciate the services and the kindness offered by individuals.
Yes. Seeing none, we're going to move to section 10, taxi bylaw, driver seat request for additional license. This is a new vehicle for the fleet, so Chief, if you have any information on that, and there is a resolution.
Other than, I have no comment on whether the taxi cab adds a new car to their fleet. I'm sure it's safe and appropriate for the city.
And just for the board, we have a new 2022 Chrysler Pacifica that we would like to register under our limo license. Coverage letter and pink slips are attached. The vehicle is brand new. So any questions or concerns or seeing none? Move by.
Take your pick.
Seconded by Matt, seconded by,
One of the two of us.
okay. Resolved that the board request of driver's seat for an additional, resolve that the board approve the request for driver's seat for an addition of one taxi license, bringing their taxi fleet to 3. All in favor? Approved. Number 11, request for donation, Walk for Alzheimer's. I believe that this is coming from within. I think we have done this before, so if there's any comments, yeah.
Mr. Acting President, I'm opposed to it. I have lost my sister to Alzheimer's, sister-in-law to Alzheimer's, a very good friend of mine's wife is going through a terrible time, but I made my own pledge of support to Alzheimer's this past Monday. And again, I think that that money that we have in that fund is just going to start continuing to ask for more and more and more and more from wonderful organizations around town. There's all kinds of them, you know, and when I think of them, you know, I feel for them, but I think that's our own individual support that's required, and I don't think that money should be donated or spent anywhere outside of the police services. Just my opinion.
Rick or Matt, any questions or comments?
Yeah.
Before we move, Matt?
I would, I've made my position known on this as well. If it would be possible to have whoever made the request circulate a donation link or form, I think that there is interest from us to give, but I don't think it should be the police service board itself that's giving. And I'll certainly give if the link is circulated.
Okay. Rick?
I'm in support of the request. I made my comments known publicly on this in the past that we are, after all, a community organization. It's a member of the service that's requesting the donation. The proceeds are coming from auction and not from our operating money. I think it's important that we show our support for community events. I think it's quite often these requests come from people that are members of the service that have put in their own time. And we are a part of the community, and I think that these requests are nominal, and it shows that we're supporting. We've done it in the past. I don't, all of a sudden this has come up in the last little while, but in any event, I strongly believe, as you know, as the community representative, that we should be supporting the community. So that would be my position.
Okay, and my position is that we have given this in the past. We would, as my position was initially, was to look at each one individually. And in this case, we have given before, so I'm in favor of giving as we speak individually on each one of these. And because it will be a tie, I'm going to move it over to the next meeting when we have a full board meeting and we have 5 votes to cast. All in favor? Approved.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just I have one thing I wanted to add for new business.
Please,
It's okay.
please.
It's a different topic altogether, but I just wanted to thank Inspector Duguay and Deputy Chief McLaughlin for taking the board on a tour of the facility last week. I just wanted to comment that I appreciated the opportunity to have the tour. Confirmed the suspicions and the discussions we've had about this building over the years, that it's woefully inadequate, in my opinion, and based on the reports that we've received over the years and listening to members of the service, members of the leadership group, that this building is well past its prime, not just even in terms of its physical state, but its physical size. There is literally no room for any expansion. Offices are filled with boxes. It's a maze, and unfortunately, if you just visit the service to the front desk or to this boardroom or to the training room, and like members of the media who can't see the rest of the building, they wouldn't see it. This room, the training room, the front entrance looks sufficient. The executive suites where your guests would visit look sufficient. But if you see where people are working in this facility, it's woefully inadequate. And I'm surprised that it hasn't become an issue in the past sooner. This building is well past its prime. It's in a bad location. It needs to change and it needs to move. So thank you for the tour.
Thanks. Yeah, Matt, if I could add to that, yeah, I think there is some benefit to having members of the media actually do a tour of whatever areas they can access. I think that it was obvious to anyone who attended that tour that was given to us that the place was built for a service that existed in the 1990s, and some of it a service that existed in the 1960s, but that it doesn't meet the needs of a modern service that we have today. So I think there's, you can keep patching it, but it will not meet the needs of our service going forward.
thank you. Ian?
Mr. Acting Chair, Rick had mentioned that he's surprised it wasn't raised in the past. I can assure you, Rick, in the 10 years that I was on the board prior to getting reappointed, it was brought up several times, and we did have a tour. And it was at that time, which would now be probably 12 years ago, it was deemed by that chief at that time, Chief Davies, that all we were doing is pouring money after money after money into this building, and something should be done. And every time that there was a thought for something to be done, where's the money going to come from? Well, it's a community police department. The money should be coming from the community somewhere along the line. But no, it hasn't improved, and it's only getting worse.
Thank you, Ian. On my own behalf, and I concur with my colleagues that, and having seen the building, been here for many, many years as well, the state of affairs isn't very good, and it continues to deteriorate. And again, we are putting monies after monies into the building. So at some point, it will come to fruition that we do need a new building. So having said that, any other comments before I move on to the next one.
Just on that point, I think my position's known and ought to be perhaps on the record that whatever we can put downtown ought to be put downtown, because I think that there's a need for, that's where our greatest needs are as a community in terms of outreach and enforcement. And I think that that is where any aspect of the force that can be down there should be down there. And I know that all aspects of the force can't be down there, but whatever can be put down there should be put down there.
Thank you. Any others? Thank you, Rick, for bringing that up. And thank you to all of our people who have helped in that situation. Section 12, Police Services Boardroom Renovation. Again, just a little bit of a history here. Chief, maybe you just want to, I know we talked about it last time. It's not a big deal. And it's just a little bit of painting and stuff like that, that I think we're
going to keep the old plants, the fake plants.
his initial though.
We're gonna sell them to.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
No, my position is no different than I think we've discussed before. This is the board's room. This is the community's room where you make your decisions of governance. And obviously there are some health and safety issues on the floor that we need to address. So those monies have been identified and costs are there, and it's reasonable to do something in the here and now simply from a health and safety perspective.
And the amount is 5,000 that will be used. And any other questions or comments? Moved by?
I'll let Matt go first.
Matt?
I'm in your eyes.
Seconded, yes. Rick.
Yeah.
Be it resolved that the board approves the amount of $5,000 to be taken from the board auction account to renovate the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services Boardroom. All in favor? Approved. Any new business in the open section? Seeing none. Our next open meeting will be June 30th, 2022.
Does the board sit in the summer? This is my first year on the board.
No.
No
No.
summer meeting?
July and
No,
August.
No summer.
Hiatus.
Just to note, our meeting for June 30th is right before July 1st, which is a day off. So just think about that if that changes anything for anybody who might be taking an extra long weekend.
Okay,
Better to just,
Reschedule.
we can, yeah.
better to decide sooner that we would change
It's
the
a
date
good
rather
call.
than later.
Yeah, that's good information. Okay, good. I'll present that to Lisa as well. So we will check it out, okay? And come back. Adjournment time is 1:33, moved by Matt, seconded by Rick, that the regular meeting is adjourned and the board enter into the caucus meeting. All in favor?